My challenge for myself this month is to call this book Monster Core 2, not Monster Manual, not Bestiary. Let's see how well I do. October may be done, but it is Monster Month here on the No Direction podcast because we are looking at Monster Core 2, the latest monster book and the latest core book for the Pathfinder role-playing game. I'll be talking with Josh Birdsong, one of the lead designers of the Monster Core 2, of Monster Core 2, and not only will he be the interview segment where we'll be talking about the approach to the book and what the goals were for this specific Monster Core, but also, because it's the first time I've talked to Josh, he'll be the subject of this month's fireside chat as well as we find his path to Pathfinder. But before we get to that, one of the coolest things about Pathfinder monsters is the amount of world building they cram in there. People that were there for first edition might remember all the jokes about the aboliths. Did the aboliths do it? And this was a running theme that the aboliths were these world manipulators from below the sea, and that they had this great magic that could create ripple effects that affected people on land. And it was really just told through the flavor text of monster entries and the occasional ecology article. And it wasn't like there was no the aboliths did it adventure path. It was just something that came up so often that one of the editors, I believe it was Wes Schneider, wrote on a whiteboard, did the aboliths do it? No. So I want to show how much story Paizo packs into every monster entry by picking a random monster here and telling you how it can be the subject of an entire adventure. So not just a single combat, but that it is the final fight, and the fact that it is the final monster at the end of this adventure will be foreshadowed based on scenes that use the information in its monster entry. Looking over the book, the first creature appears on page 8. It's the Adamant Sentinel. And the last one, the Zombie Dragon, appears on page 359. So I'm going to randomly pick a page between 8 and 359, and that will be the subject of our adventure, acknowledging that some monsters have multi-page spreads, and so they have a slightly higher chance, but less than an extra percentage point, even like not even a full percentage point higher, that they get picked. All right, I've called up random.org. We're sharing a number between, once again, page 8 and page 359. Let's see what creature is going to be the subject of an entire adventure. Page 24. Oh, that's early in the alphabet. I was going to say, what are the odds? But obviously, 1 in 351. Looking in the book, that is the Ambush Corpse. Sawed and axe-hewn timber grinds together as an ambush corpse moves, smashing through the forest. I almost feel like I have an unfair advantage here because I'd actually written a Transformers scenario where a log-like sound wave that I'm sure had a clever name, a clever tree-based pun that I'm forgetting now. But I actually already have a scenario in mind for this. I will try to come up with a whole new scenario that is not connected to my tree sound wave scenario that I'd already come up with. So the first thing I want to look at is the creature's level, and it is level 13. That's a good number. That means that we can make it like a campaign-ending threat for a 10th level party, which, you know, not every campaign goes to 20 levels, and if you've got the kind of party that, or you have the kind of players that just really like creating new characters and exploring new characters and often want to reset a campaign, ending at level 10 with a level 13 threat, that works. Next, we're going to look over the flavor. So not just the description at the top under Ambush Corpse. Oh, I'm sorry, it's an Ambush Copse. I hope I'm saying that right. Oh, Copse? Copsy? Cops? It's worth looking up. Do I trust Cambridge Dictionary or Julian Miguel, who has correctly with an exclamation point? I find that sus, so I'm going to go with, actually, no, I'll go with Merriam-Webster. Cops. Cops. An ambush copse. Sawed and axe-hewn timber grind together as an ambush copse moves, smashing through the forest. Cuts and burns mar the bark of this gigantic angry moss of whirling deadly logs. The forest never forgets. It remembers the hatchets, the rasping saws, and the smoke of crackling wood fires. It remembers the carts taking ancient trees away to cut, shape, and burn. Fey meddling or errant elemental magic draw such memories out alongside the rage and sorrow of the forest to form an ambush copse. An ambush copse exacts its ire on villages along the woodcutter's path or waits for intruders to step into its forest domain. While an ambush copse might be mistaken for a wounded arboreal, it can cease movement to appear as an overgrown pile of logs or a partially collapsed hovel. There, it waits for retribution. Once again, feel like I'm cheating because it has basically laid out what the story will be. The story will be something's going wrong along a route between a forest and a city that has a lumber industry. So right there we know our quest giver could definitely be some kind of lumberjack. It could also be a concerned parent in the same city as a lumber industry. And that way, when the quest giver gets in contact with the party, yes, we'll go with this. So, concerned parent, classic quest giver. Child or children have gone missing while exploring the forest. It is in this lumber town. We need some investigation about what is going on. So I know I had talked about the possibility of it being a campaign ending quest, but this feels more like this is a side quest. This is a new objective divorced from the main objective of the campaign. So anytime your roughly 13th level party needs a distraction, needs a break from the meta plot of the campaign, if they find themselves in an urban environment, preferably one that you can arguably say has a lumber industry, you can insert this adventure. You know what? I said missing children. Let's take it a step back and just say missing family member. Because as a rule, Paizo doesn't have child endangerment in its adventures. And so even though this is not something that's being published by Paizo, we know that it's consistent with the campaign and the adventures that are set in the Lost Omens era, that generally you will not have to worry about missing children. So let's do an indirect. Let's say someone's brother is missing. And the reason I like saying a brother is that it's not as personal as a spouse. It's definitely not as personal as children. And it gives more reason to investigate. Okay, so we know what the brother is to our quest giver. Let's say it's a woman, just so that when I'm using the he and she pronouns, you're knowing whether I'm talking about the quest giver or the victim. So her brother's missing. We know their relationship. No, we know their connection, but it gives us a step we can investigate with their relationship, because sibling relationships can be complicated. Are they close? Was there something that separated them, some kind of wedge that was driven between them and the family? One step of the investigation is to look into it, because players have been conditioned to suspect their quest givers, because so many GMs will have the quest giver twist that they were the ones that did it all along. And so by having it be a sibling, it means that there could be something to that relationship that would justify the player's suspicion. And we, as mature and experienced GMs, know not to do the old quest giver is secretly the villain cliche, but it's still worth having that as a plot point of the adventure so that we can eliminate it right away. So we will say that they have a fairly good relationship, but they're older now, so they don't see each other on a daily basis, and so it may have been a couple of days since he went missing. Who is this brother? He's either a lumberjack, or maybe he's a coachman who works the cart that brings the lumber back and forth. He's definitely involved in the lumber industry. And our quest giver, maybe not necessarily, although could be a benefactor of the lumber industry. So somebody that, say, polishes the axes. Let's say our quest giver is a blacksmith. She is regularly visited by the lumberjacks who need their saws and their axes sharpened and cleaned. Before we go on with the story, every monster in Monster Core has this sidebar. The layout of the Monster Core has been consistent since second edition, and I really like it because it's you don't see this layout in any other book, where it's a 3/4 column on the inside of the page is the meat of the page, and then there's this sidebar that gives you any kind of information you want. It is really formulaic to what's on the inside. We know how a monster stat block looks, and then it's dealer's choice for what appears on the sidebar. So let's read the sidebar for the ambush cops. Ravages of revenge. An endless wait for revenge invariably leaves an ambush copse riddled with mushrooms and termites. Apply the weak adjustment to such an ambush copse and give it weakness 10 to bludgeoning damage. During a period of dormancy, parts of the ambush copse might break off, gain their own sentience, and make their way into a nearby camp or village. Like, if I really wanted to do that Soundwave version, like, that is exactly how I would have Ravage and Laserbeak, but again, is not what we're doing this time. Use the stats for a Twigjack, Monster Core 332, to represent these stray pieces whose arrival might presage the full awakening of an ambush copse. So again, they're making my job too easy of taking this randomly picked monster and making it an adventure. So I was like, when I conceptualized this topic, I was like, there are secret ways that you can read a stat block, and if you can unlock the hidden lore within, you will find yourself an adventure. We have its minions picked out, we have its main motivation, we have its setting. Like, so much has already been established just by reading the description. Now let's talk about the stats, and we'll see how we can incorporate them into the story. It has tremor sense, so right away I know that when we do the final encounter, it's going to be hidden somewhere, and it will know when the PCs are there. So that's cool. It is ambush cops. So it being able to tell that the PCs are in its area and get the jump on them, fully delivering on the concept of this creature. Languages is not really going to come up. And it can't speak. So even if we have a druid in the party or a ranger or, a cleric of some kind of nature domain, this is probably not going to get sidetracked by much diplomacy. This is a creature built on revenge and will not participate in any verbal communication and maybe verbal diplomacy. But just overall, while we should be aware as GMs that this is a forest-based fey creature, or at least one that can speak fey, looking at its traits, it's actually an elemental, a wood elemental. It's not, actually its intelligence is 0 and its charisma is 0. So there we go. We should be prepared if we have a druid or a druid type character in the party. We should be prepared for them to want to solve this in some non-combat way, but it's really not given us many options. So that is something that they may bring to the table, and we need to sell that that it's futile. So try it, fail, reassure them that yes, you are fighting a creature of wood, but you are not going against the wishes of the tree spirits, that this is something that is like, it's almost plant undead. So they shouldn't feel like they are going against their oath, but feel free to let them roleplay that and add a character-based dynamic to any encounter and the entire investigation involving this creature. But whether we have that type of character in the party or not doesn't really affect how we're going to lay out the plot. It's just how it's going to run. All right, it has a weakness to axe and fires. Perfect. If it didn't, I would probably make one up. It is resistant to bludgeoning and piercing. So it's funny, when I was reading the sidebar and it was talking about how when it's rotting, it might be vulnerable to bludgeoning, but to me, like, trying to break, no, I suppose. All right, so once wood gets like waterlogged, if you try and hit it with the axe, it absorbs more of the impact. So I don't have a lot of experience whacking a waterlogged branch or log with a blunt object. So maybe in the research, the game designer, or maybe just through their own, drawing their own conclusions, they decided that waterlogged branch would be more vulnerable to that. I don't know. I just know that when it is not waterlogged, which ours will not be, it is resistant to bludgeoning and piercing, but axes really have its number, and fires even more so. Berserk is interesting. An ambush copse that sees fire or axes has a chance of going berserk. So it's not even like it has to take the damage and then it will potentially go berserk. If it's even aware of it, and I know it says sees, I would allow for the tremor sense. I don't know if you can tremor sense fire. So I guess it would have to pop out of the ambush and then witness what they are wielding and realize that, oh no, this is bad for me. At the start of its turn, if it is aware of an axe or fire the size of a lit torch or larger, so, odds are if they have a fire, it'll be a lit torch. The ambush cops must succeed at a DC 5 flat check or go berserk. I like that. I like DC 5 because as the GM, I like going into an encounter, not even knowing how it's going to play out in certain ways. And so I know that this will be a combat encounter, and I haven't read the results, like the effects of going berserk. I assume it's going to change the pitch and make it more deadly, but possibly less clever in how I would roleplay it. But DC 5 is so low that it's just something that would be like a low-level concern that I get to explore every turn. A Berserk Ambush Copse can't use concentrate actions and wildly attacks the nearest living creature or the nearest object if no creatures are nearby. Excellent. So that turns things around. I actually was hoping there would be some kind of advantage to going Berserk. There isn't. That's kind of unfortunate. I would have liked to increase damage. But in any case, it does make it attack the nearest living creature, so ideal situation now would be we have a druid in the party. The druid is trying to reason with it, and it is losing its mind and attacks the druid because the fighter has a torch. That gives the players a chance to roleplay, like, put out the fire, it's clearly reacting to the fire. And yet it still puts the druid in danger, and now they have to decide if they're going to fight back or not. Again, this is all a theoretical party. We can play this out in any way, but that is something that I can see a dynamic that can be brought to an encounter involving this creature. Blinding Branches. It is a reaction. When a creature within 20 feet of the ambush copse leaves a square during a move action it's using. This is a huge creature, so I have a feeling it's going to be able to reach creatures within 20 feet, and it's going to mess with people as they get close. And Blinding Branches, obviously, it's going to mess with their eyesight. So the triggering creature is in forest terrain. Okay. Oh, interesting. So it's not necessarily the ambush copse it's not their branches that are blinding the creature. The effect: the ambush copse's elemental energy animates nearby tree branches to swat at the creature's face. Triggering creature must succeed at a DC 30 reflex save or become blinded for 1 round. I like it. I like a lot of things about that. That is a high DC. Level 13, so maybe not necessarily, but it's a reflex, so it's definitely only certain members of the party will be expected to reliably beat that. It is blinded for 1 round, so we do get to deal with the problems of being blind, but it's not going to ruin somebody's night where they thought they were going to have fun, rolling dice and killing a monster. They are going to have to deal with this blinded condition. But if they just wait it out, then they eventually get their turn, and they know to approach more cautiously. Felling Ambush is another reaction, so that's something as a GM I do have to be aware of, that I have 2 different reactions, which means it's not my turn. I cannot go into the stat block and just kind of read up what I'm going to do next. At every single player's turn, I have to be watching for 2 different scenarios that could trigger a reaction. That is not ideal. As a GM, it puts a lot of load on my mind at a time when I am already juggling multiple things. So I would have to approach this differently and expect the scenario to play out a little more slowly, because I will have less time between my turn to plan my next turn and, just plan out my descriptions and whatnot. I'm not talking necessarily tactically, but just playing out the emotion of the scene. Because I have 2 reactions on my mind, I will have to rely a lot more on my improv and a lot less on my thought. So what does Felling Ambush do? A creature moves within 10 feet of the ambush copse. Okay, so at least the only thing I'm worried about is people getting within a certain distance of my creature. And actually, I didn't even think about this, but this is great when it's laying in wait. Like the Blinding Branches, it could be totally hidden. What is my stealth? My stealth is plus 25 in forests. So it could be totally hidden. The PCs know that this is the area that this thing is definitely found in. They walk into it, and unbeknownst to them, they get within 20 feet of the copse. Oh, tree in the eye. Good luck finding this hidden creature. It's a lot more clever. The Blinding Branches, it's a lot more clever design than I realized initially. So Felling Ambush is when they get within 10 feet. So now it's like, all right, it's gotten past the loose branches. Oh, and going back to, I was surprised it wasn't just the thing poking them in the eye. That's why. It's because it is trying to stay hidden. So it is attacking the PCs even from a hiding spot. So Felling Ambush, trigger. Creature moves within 10 feet of the ambush copse. The ambush copse, requirements. The ambush copse is disguised as tree or logs. And effect, the ambush copse makes a log strike against the triggering creature. If the attack hits, the creature must attempt a DC 30 reflex save or be knocked prone. So, okay. I don't really have to keep track of this in the combat like I was concerned about earlier. Because this is really all going to happen once, the PCs will slowly be closing in, and once the cops is like, all right, they're definitely going to find me, I need to attack now, this is their attack. They get to attack with their log strike, which is their main melee attack. And if they hit, they also happen to knock the creature down. Going through some of its other stats, speed 30 feet. Okay, so once it does reveal itself, it is a bit of a slogger, so it's not going to be able to maneuver around the battlefield much, but I picture this as a solo creature encounter. I know they were talking about bringing in the Twigjacks, but I see them more as like encounters leading up to the final encounter. I think the final encounter will be this one creature against the party. Although, it's worth reconsidering. We know exactly what minion to throw in there if we want to throw off the action economy of the group and give a little more variety to the space and, make sure that the casters don't just stand in the back blasting this thing with fireball after fireball until this giant, vulnerable to fire wooden creature falls. So I have convinced myself we're going to throw in a couple of Twigjacks, a creature I'm not familiar enough with to know what their level is, so we'll have to figure out what the appropriate threat is after the fact. But what I am conceptualizing right now is that the ambush cops with some Twigjacks nearby, or Twigjacks? No, Twigjacks. I saw the dot over the J and thought there was an IJ. I kind of like Twigjacks better, but Twigjacks. The Twigjacks will be laying in wait. They are the reserves. Reserve minions. Because, once this thing pops up, even if people haven't read the stat block, the idea that you use fire against a wood creature, pretty obvious. Going back to its stats, its log has the backswing, forceful, and sweep traits, and has a reach of 20 feet. Does 3d12 plus 14 bludgeoning damage plus pounding smash. I'm going to have to look these up before I run this encounter, but I can tell you that they all sound like they take care of a lot of creatures around it and deal a lot of damage. And ranged attack. It can throw a caber. That's fun. I go back and forth about whether I like that every single attack has a flavorful but inconsequential name. And when I see something like a wood creature having a caber attack as its ranged attack, it puts me back on the side of like, yes, I like this. Some of these flavor choices make me smile. So it can throw it up to 40 feet away. I don't see us using that too often, especially if we use the Twigjacks as our minions. If the Twigjacks put the level of the encounter too high for a party, then that is a good alternative, although knowing that the person in the back blasting you with fire is just one thing that's happening while you're most likely being surrounded by several other people, mostly attacking with melee. Although I guess, if you've got one, say a barbarian type or a fighter type or a champion as the front line for a party that mostly goes in the back line, having a pretty, like a plus 25 is only slightly smaller than a plus 27, so it's still a pretty reliable ranged attack. 40 feet is like, it's not a longbow, but in my experience on a battle map, 40 feet is a good chunk of the battle map, so there's a good chance that a character is within that range. Feign Corpse. Oh, that's fun. This is a single action. Until the next time it acts, the ambush cops appears to be a harmless patch of trees or logs. It has an automatic result of 43 or 45 in forest on deception checks and DCs to pass as trees or logs. So let me just double check until the next time it acts. So I'm trying to figure out if this feels like something you would do before the combat. Like this explains why it's so hard to see. I'm trying to figure out if this is something I could actively use as a GM in the middle of the combat. And I suppose if enough people get blinded, although it only has the one reaction. So I find it hard to believe that even if it's passing for a log, that the PCs wouldn't be able to narrow down that if we set fire to that pile of logs where the ambush copes just sat down, even though it looks like just a pile of logs, like I've played Breath of the Wild, I can tell where the chameleons, the Lizalos are hiding, even if they're camouflaged. So I doubt I would ever use that in combat unless unless you had something like an obscuring mist type spell. I don't see this playing into it. All right, Pounding Smash, which is one of the riders of the melee attack. Regardless of whether the strike hits or misses, the ambush cops' melee strikes create a 5-foot square of difficult terrain in the target space. Handy. I like that kind of effect. It is flavorful, and it also adds issues that the party has to slowly deal with. 5-foot space of difficult terrain is not going to be something that it's not likely to trip them up, but it is something that, if it does factor into it, you're like, you bet you wish it hadn't smashed that spot now. And it's also fairly easy for me to just take out, the brown dry erase marker, mark the spot on the ground that is now difficult terrain. And the longer the combat goes, the more difficult terrain surrounds it. And you're realizing that you are now trapped in this circle of, this circle that is slowing you down with this giant creature that is out to kill you. Pulverizing Barrage. 3 actions. The ambush cops takes 3 log strikes, each at a -2 penalty, so the annoying multi-attack penalty, all targeting the same creature. 3 log strikes, which again do 3d12 plus 14 damage each. 3 against the same creature. The ambush cops' multiple attack penalty doesn't increase until after it has made all 3 attacks. Okay. The ambush cops gains the clumsy 2 condition until the beginning of its next turn. I'm trying to picture when I would choose to use that, because -2 will probably not, -2 on 3 attacks is better than -0, -5, -10 for a total of -15 across 3 attacks. -6 across 3 attacks is obviously a lot better. The math is in its favor. The fact that I have to focus on a single character, 1, feels mean, and 2 does not feel particularly strategic. Although, if it is Berserk, then we know it is focused on the nearest living creature. So that would be a good time to be to change how this thing is working. If it was not running Berserk, all right, attack here, attack there, attack whomever. Going Berserk, it's fully focused on that one closest living creature. If it's an animal companion, I feel extra bad. If it's a PC, they can roll up a new character. But that animal companion can never be brought back. So yes, because it is so focused on a single character, I expect I would mostly only use this in Berserk mode, but I am not forced to. I can choose, and if in the scenario I get within 20 feet of a Pyromancer, then yeah, I am definitely going to focus all of my attacks on that single major threat to this creature. Sunder Objects. When an ambush corpse damages an item or structure, it deals additional 15 damage to that item or structure. I mean, that's the last one. That's kind of a weak thing that I don't expect to come into play. But, that's just how the alphabet works with the way they listed these abilities. All right, so my question is, what of these things can we use to foreshadow that this is the creature that will be at the end of the adventure, and to use it to inform the players of what to expect when they finally do attack it? So easily I can see that, all right, they're looking for this blacksmith's brother, and they come across the local physician. I forget the era-appropriate term. I don't think it's apothecary. So we'll just say physician. And they are treating people with, scarred eyes. So even though the blinding only lasts for the 1 round, we can definitely... If you get a tree in the eye, the first thing you would do when you get back to town is be like, am I okay? I couldn't see anything for a solid 6 seconds. Am I going to be okay? So that gives us someone that they can interact with, that they can not interrogate, but question. It gives us a social scene, and it gives us an information giver. So if this happens to multiple people, in fact, they can find someone there at the beginning of the investigation, and if the investigation's slowing down, instead of reminding them, hey, remember that person that went blind, you didn't ask them enough questions or whatever, we can bring in a second blind person. Now we are reinforcing the idea that, this is something that is happening in this town, in that forest down yonder, which just happens to be where the missing brother works. And so there's enough arrows pointing you in that direction that's where you're going next. No, I didn't think too highly of Sunder Objects, but you know what? It could actually be a major clue for us, in that we are talking to the blacksmith, and maybe the reason that she thought to look for her brother is because somebody came back from the forest. They just happened to find a whole bunch of axes that, they've been busted up. Could she fix them? And she'll look at it and it's like, this was my dad's axe. He gave it to my brother. He would never let this family heirloom go missing, and even if it broke, his sister's a blacksmith. He wouldn't just discard it in the forest. Come to think of it, I haven't seen my brother in a while. So that gives us a good clue that contextualizes something that this creature can do. And even if it doesn't come up in the encounter, after the adventure, the GM can be like, hey, you remember that broken axe? Well, I didn't use this against you, but sunder object is something that this creature can do. So I was hoping that we'd be able to create at least 3 scenes hinting towards the ambush cups. So we've got the quest giver scene, we've got the broken axe clue, we've got the blinded lumberjack clue. What's one last thing we can do to really drive home? Oh, you know what would be fun? If we have like a kid in town singing a nursery rhyme. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but if you feel like writing a nursery rhyme and just having the kids in town singing them while they're doing hopscotch or something, and after a little bit of investigation, the players start to clue in that the context of, or some of the lines in that really sound like they're talking about some kind of tree creature that blinds people, and gives them a chance to look into it, gives the bard a chance, if we've got a bard in the party or some other kind of performance-based character, can use their expertise in this area to be like, oh, well, historically, nursery rhymes are often ways to make children feel better about terrible things that are happening around it, and also for them to understand it. And then what could be fun is then, if as soon as the PCs reach the forest, where we've given them any indication that like there is some horrible monster, according to this song, some horrible tree monster, then we throw a single twig jack at them and just play up like the similarities between the song and the twig jack, which again, I don't know this creature, but just based on the name and the fact that it's a minion of the ambush cops, that according to the sidebar could just be a piece that's fallen off a rotting ambush cops, I imagine it's pretty small. And so that can definitely give the players the idea of like, oh, the GM bamboozled us. They made us think there was some giant tree monster, but it's just this tiny little twig jack. So they fight the one twig jack, defeat it easily, and then get poked in the eye. Wait, but the twig jack's dead. How did I get poked in the eye? And then you can do the ambush cops as the actual threat. So that's a fun way of making this combat a little more memorable. And then we can throw in a few more of those twig jacks, and they will need less explaining, even if they're coming in a couple of rounds later, because we've already introduced them as one of the villains of this scenario. So that means that when you introduce these new players in the combat, you don't have to spend a lot of time describing them because the players are already familiar with them. So that'll speed up this change to the landscape of the combat. We're looking at a single session, I think. I think depending on how good your players are in investigating, we are looking at about 2 hours of them in town talking around. And the bigger that we make this town or the city, the longer it can take for them to get to the blind person, and the fact that there's a lumber industry. The longer you have for this adventure, and the more your players are engaged with role-playing and like city exploration type scenes, investigation scenes, the bigger you make that city. If you're pressed for time, if this is like, I am trying to introduce a party to Pathfinder, don't do a 13th level adventure, but just if that's the scenario you're in, smaller cities, you can go from clue to clue to clue, to the twig fight, the twig jack fight, to the ambush cops. Plenty of opportunities to make this very flavorful, plenty of opportunities for a lot of role-playing, plenty of opportunities for a lot of story that, regardless of whether it has anything to do with the meta plot of the campaign, will be a memorable session. Maybe 2. And that is just one of hundreds of new monsters introduced in Monster Core 2. So if you are interested in learning more about what's in this book, here's my conversation with one of the Monster Core 2 lead designers, Joshua Birdsong. November is Monster Month at the No Direction Network, and the reason for that is that Monster Core 2 is the latest hardcover from Paizo for the Pathfinder role-playing game. And to talk about it and what goes into a second monster book for an edition, we have one of the lead designers, Joshua Birdsong. Josh, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Now, this is the second monster book for a Pathfinder edition. And the first 2, so Bestiary 2 and then another Bestiary 2, kind of had this reputation for being like the most logistically necessary collection of monsters. When you got Monster Core 2 on your lap, how did you approach it differently?
It was, well, the biggest thing was, of course, the dragons. The dragons were such a big change with the remaster, and it's such a freeing approach to be able to design your own dragons in that sense, where you're not tied down by any kind of set collection anymore. And it was so much fun to just like think about like those and to approach that. And that was, of course, the biggest thing that everyone is hyped and excited about. But it is also a great opportunity to make a lot of other like adjustments and things. Like the golem is something that we are very proud of, where we actually got like Jewish writers to approach the golem, and we redesigned all the other golems to not be golems because they really aren't golems, they're just constructs. And it was a great opportunity to introduce an actual golem into the game that more aligned with the actual Jewish mythology of the golem, which is something that we took a lot of care in designing. It was a wonderful approach to be able to add a lot of different creatures to the existing creature types to expand the portfolio of everything you could do. It was just a wonderful opportunity in general to be an additive format to the Pathfinder collection of monsters.
I do like that is something that Paizo's gotten better at over the years, and that is that they will base monsters on different mythologies besides just the like
Hmm.
European stuff that a lot
Yeah.
of fantasy was based on. And something that I've noticed is that when they were originally doing that, especially with like Eastern monsters, they would like smooth out a lot of the weirder elements to it. And it feels like now it's like, no, the weird element is the point. It's the spice that makes
Yep.
this thing
Oh,
what
gosh,
why it
yes.
stands out globally.
We had several different designers each approach a different angel to capture different angels in different parts of the world, and it's really cool. The angel section aren't just all Christian angels aesthetically anymore. It's a I really like the approach that we did, and we got lots of consultations, lots of different designers to work on these from different areas of life. It was wonderful.
So there are a lot of designers on this book. It is a
Yes.
nearly 400-page book with over 300 monsters in it, and there are dozens of. I'm not going to count them all, but it looks like there's at least 50 names in the designer contributor list. So when you're putting this book together, what's the hopscotch like of like, well, we need this many monsters, so we need that kind of author, so we need etc.
Yeah, it's just that work is a little bit tedious, but it's good to be able to approach things, and we want to be make sure that we're covering a good number of bases and making sure doing the extra steps necessary to make sure that we're doing it in a way that is respectful and appropriate. And even though it's more work and more effort, it is definitely well worth doing, and we're happy to do it. It's something that we're really proud of, and I think it's good for the community of gaming as a whole.
Now, do you plan out the entire list, or do you see what some of the freelancers want to write and want to bring to this new book?
Yeah. A bit of both. There are definitely some things that are very like flexible in a way. And then there are some things that we like definitely want to do this thing. Like sometimes we will approach one and they say, hey, we want two new devils for this, ideally between like this level range and this level range. And sometimes we'll be like, we want very specifically this one thing. But it's often really enjoyable to work with the creative ideas of the designers that we hire. So generally keeping things relatively as open as we can is an approach we like to take because we're not the only ones with good ideas. All the people who we hire as freelancers are all brilliant designers, and they have lots of great ideas. And it's good to learn from them and have them learn from us and work together to design something awesome. And people are going to generally design something cooler when they're designing something that they want to design. So keeping things relatively open is a great way to do that.
Is there anything off the top of your head that surprised you when it was turned over?
The elementals came out so cool. Every single one of them was awesome. Like we knew we wanted a new elemental of all the types, and they just each came out so wonderfully. My favorite one is actually the confluence of all the elements. I love the approach that they took to that, because all we really gave them was like we wanted a creature that enveloped all six elements. And what they came up with was so cool and awesome, and it's one of my favorite creatures in the book.
I do like how elementals have evolved from how it was presented in first edition, which was how it was presented in D&D 4, which is just a big pile of that element. Whereas
Yeah.
now you're getting a lot of variety to the how it's presented, whether it's corporeal, whether it's more just ethereal. You never know what you're getting, even if you see fire elemental, earth elemental, etc.
Yeah. Absolutely. And of course, you do want to keep those core consistencies like fire elementals are weak to cold damage and things like that. But other than that, yeah, it's very freeing now in the sense it's not just like big lump of thing. Now it's like the wood elemental is like a hunk of cut trees tied together. It's so cool. The earth one is just like is this rock monster that has like tools on its hands that like drills and pickaxes and stuff, and it's awesome. I like it a lot.
Now, how about how much legacy creations, like things that are maybe specific to Pathfinder, things that have come from games before it? How much of that content is in there, and how do you approach that differently from, say, new monsters or, well, just say new monsters?
Well, it is important to have some amount of legacy monsters in there. People like will have expectations of what kind of creatures they want to see in there, and it's good to be able to give people the options to use what they expect to be available to them. People want there to be goblins to fight or goblins to befriend. People expect that in a game, and it's if we want to be able to deliver on those expectations of the game. So having some amount of legacy content in there is always very important to do.
I I always have the weirdest emotional reactions to seeing monsters I recognize because it'll be like, oh yeah, that was the monster. Oh, that killed my wife in Kingmaker. But I recognize it, and
Exactly.
so there's some familiarity that makes me feel a little good.
Yes. Exactly. Like you want to be able to fight the things that you expect to be able to fight. You want to see the dragon in the cave. You want to fight the dire wolf on the mountain. These are things that people want to see, they expect to see, and it's really fun and satisfying to be able to fight those things that you always imagined that you're fighting. Making up monsters out of nowhere is fun. But this is a fantasy game, and there are lots of tropes that people want to play into, and it's good to be able to provide something for everybody.
Let's talk about naming conventions. When does a monster need something like the tick belang, which I hear that, I have no idea what to expect, versus the skull peeler, where I hear that, and there's one very specific thing that I can expect from it.
Oh, there are a lot of different reasons why names can appear as they do. Sometimes they're cultural to an extent, and it might just be a cultural myth of a creature that you just don't recognize, so the name just appears funny to you, but other people might recognize it immediately. Sometimes it is just like something that you want to evoke a powerful reaction to, either to play into an expectation or to subvert an expectation. Like the skull peeler is one that you gave an example to, has a terrifying name, but then you look at it and it's this like cute little like monkey thing, and then like, oh, that can't be too scary, and then it is that scary. It's a lot can be done with a name, and sometimes they are named funny because of the region that we expect the monster to hail from. Like if it comes from like a Fey world, it might have a weird Fey name. Yeah, there are lots of different approaches to naming things, and sometimes they end up with skull peelers, and sometimes you end up with other other strange names that I sometimes struggle to pronounce.
Now, I've been gaming for a long time, so of course I've read a lot of monster entries, and some stick with me and others don't. And the brownie is one that, for whatever reason, when I first read it in high school during second edition Dungeons and Dragons, that
Yeah.
was one that, as a GM, I was like, I need to work this into an adventure, even though it's barely a combat creature. So, like, how do you know when to put something in that it's like an unconventional creature to use?
Boy, this is something that we will approach for when we're almost in like the really early stages of the book, when we're trying to decide what kind of things we want in the book, and we want to have a good mix of different approaches to play styles. So we do want to put in some monsters that aren't just like you see it kill on sight. Not every monster is a kill on sight monster. And it's good to have a diversity of those kinds of creatures in there for different play styles, and also the mix things up a bit. A lot of the monsters are really good at fighting monsters, but some of them are, like we put the Leshy creature in this one, and you're not going to fight every Leshy she or the poppets. But it's good to have those options there as people that you can meet as more NPCs sometimes, and sometimes they're NPCs that might end up being a fight later down the road, or something you start off fighting and then later befriend. And it's good to have a nice diversity of it, and it's something that we think about in the early stages of the book of like what kind of amount of these we want to put in. We definitely allot some of the space in every book, monster book, to those kinds of encounters because not every encounter is a combat encounter.
I think my favorite two-page spread in the book is 58 and 59. 58, you've got the Beto Beto San, which is a smoke creature with stilted sandals and
Yep.
has a fangy grin that's a little bit adorable. And then opposite is the bison, which is it's just a bison. We have these on Earth. I saw them
Yep.
over the summer at a zoo. So yeah, again, it's just the piecing together of what to include in this book. It can come from so many different influences, and I'm fascinated with your role as someone that gets to pick the stuff that gets in there.
Yeah, it is a really fun part of the job. And it's also a heartbreaking part of the job because we always want to put more in there than we can put in there. There's when we were first trying to decide the creature for this, we had a list far longer than the list of creatures here, but we only can print so many pages of material, and we want to make sure that the things that we print are given the space that they need to shine. It's a job, you know?
Now, you did also work on Monster Core 1, or just Monster
Yes.
Core. Um,
Yeah.
were there any times during the creation of Monster Core 1 where you were like, we should save that for Monster Core 2 so that we've got some really marquee creatures in this book?
So Monster Core 1 is an interesting story because that's actually the first project I worked on to a great extent at Paizo. When I first came in here, we were already well into development of Monster Core. So any kind of overseeing decisions of what is and isn't in the book, well passed over. Um, but in that capacity, I did help develop a lot of the material for that book. And it was a great first book for me to jump in on and learn a lot of the ropes at Paizo. And it started my long experience of working with creature stat blocks because right after Monster Core, I worked on NPC Core. And then right after NPC Core, I was on Monster Core 2. So for about my first year and a half at Paizo, it was mostly creature stat blocks. So by the time I got to Monster Core 2, I was an expert.
What are some of the things you learned from Monster Core and NPC Core that you implemented for Monster Core 2?
Learning how to implement creature abilities in a way that is fun and also evocative, but not overwhelming. When you think of a creature, especially when you're building a combat creature, realistically, a combat in Pathfinder is going to be 3 to 4 rounds of combat. Meaning that creature is going to get a total of 12 actions in combat. It doesn't need 6 abilities. It's not going to have time to use them all. So learning how to properly evoke the feeling of the creature into a smaller selection of abilities is something that I learned is one of the key things to learn about designing a monster. It's all about providing the atmosphere that the monster wants to provide. Is this monster leaving out a terrifying, or is it trying to pull you into it so it can hit you, or is trying to push you away and keep and spread you out? Like, what is this monster trying to do, and what are the best tools that we can give it to showcase how this monster thinks and fights in a small number of rounds that it's going to probably exist in.
So on the topic of like what can the monster do, I had just done an encounter with the ambush copes as like a brainstorming exercise in the previous segment, and the
Mm-hmm.
ambush copes has 2 reactions. And when I first
Yeah.
saw that, my worry was, oh no, as the GM, I have to keep track of 2 different times when I have to react to something, because most of the time when I'm GMing, I'm also thinking of the description of the next thing that's going to go on. And then in reading it further, it's like, oh no, these are like one of them is like the start of the combat. So I don't have to worry about that. And really, the GMing experience of running the monster was really taken into consideration with the design of this creature.
Absolutely. Yeah, we don't want to overwhelm people with an abundance of abilities in that way because you're not gonna is it should be very clear in this design how the monster is supposed to operate. It shouldn't have things that like combo against itself, like an ability that pushes away and then only having melee attacks would be a weird like what do you want to do with this monster? Yeah, it's something that we definitely keep in mind is like what is going to be like the lifespan of actions for this monster and how is it going to operate within those parameters of what's it going to do, and having like those extra reactions could be something that might be cool for a more scary end of encounter monster where it has like it's been doing a reaction and then pulls out another one at like the last minute kind of thing. That could be something that we think about. But oftentimes you want it to be simple to the point and easy to run. Because it can be especially confusing if you're running different kinds of monsters in the same combat, which is super fun for players, but can be overwhelming for GMs.
Ah, shoot, I had a question and I've lost it, so I guess this interview is over. No, you were talking about how there were more monsters than you could fit into this book. So, if Monster Core 3 lands on your lap, is the challenge going to be filling up that book, or is that going to be the highlight that you know the next 300 monsters you're going to put out there?
There's always in every book we make more content than we can ever put into a book. And that's just the be the reality of it. If we ever do go into another monster core, I'm sure we can come up with another 700 monsters we want to put in there, and we're gonna have to cut it down. But that is how you get the best material is being able to refine and reduce down to what is the best and most essential content.
I remember what I was going to ask. So I am in the minority that misses alignments, especially as a GM, because just having a two-letter summary of the motivation of that monster was one of the greatest tools, and it's gone now. So what are some of the shorthands that I should look for as a GM to know just by looking at a stat block how what motivates it, how to use it, when to put it in?
In a way that was really freeing, but it was also I think very restrictive in a sense. I think any monster has the potential to some extent to do actions that people would perceive as evil or do actions that people would perceive as good. And a monster can be motivated by anything you want it to be motivated by. There isn't necessarily, I mean, you could look for the holy and unholy tag would be something if you want something like fighting on the side of the lower regions or the higher regions of the heavens or the hells. That's always a good way to look at it. You could just go with traditionally what things used to be like undead are bad, angels are good. Dragons can be all over the place. Now there can be good dragons and bad dragons of the same type. They aren't necessarily like born evil or born good anymore, which has always been I think personally a weird concept to be aligned at birth in that way. If you want the dragon to be an evil dragon, it can be an evil dragon. If you want the dragon to be a friend to the people to your players, then it can be.
Let's talk about art.
Okay.
Now, of course, some of this art is reused because some of these are familiar creatures, and the art still works, still fits the Pathfinder vibe. But how much do you enjoy doing art orders for monsters, and how do you approach it?
Oh, it's really fun. Art orders are one of my favorite things to do. It can be tedious at times because we often do them all at once we have the monsters picked out. But it is very very fun to do them. And it's so fun to be able to start getting the orders back in because a little bit of time had passed and sometimes you get what you wrote it and you get like an image and it's like, oh, that's so cool, and then you realize that that's the thing that you ordered. It's like when you order a thing and it takes like months to deliver and then you deliver and it's like, oh, I don't remember getting this, and you get a little present in the mail. Yeah, it's a ton of fun. And you approach every monster very differently. Like some things are going to be relatively familiar to you, but other times you're creating something entirely new, and it just becomes, how do I describe this monster as best I can in like 2 to 3 sentences, which can be a challenge, but it's a fun challenge on learning how to be very descriptive in a very short amount of words, which is something we do a lot of ISO.
And what about layout? Like every page is dense with information, with art, with the
Yes.
sidebar, and it's got that
Mhm.
unique layout. I don't know, what are some of the logistic challenges that laying out a perfect monster page presents?
Oh boy, there's a lovely process called copy fit, which is of course we have formatting that we do ahead of time to make sure that when we start formatting it kind of starts in an all right position, but it becomes it is a wonderful little game of little additions, little subtractions to make things perfectly fit on a page. Generally, we have the art there already, so we know how much space the art is taking up. We throw in the words and the text and the formatting, and then it's gonna be matching up the word count to perfectly fill in the page, either by adding or subtracting little things to it. And it is a fun process. I think it's fun. It's like a puzzle challenge with words.
Have you ever had like a death by a thousand tweaks where it's like, oh, we've got to cut this ability. Oh, but now it's got to be a lower creature level. Oh no, and now that means etc.
There had definitely been lots of things. Generally, small adjustments like that are the easier ones to do. The harder adjustments are when we put in the text and it's like 400 lines over, or it's 200 lines short, or things like that, where we have to either add or subtract a lot of stuff, which does occasionally happen. Generally, not so much with creatures. Creatures, we have a pretty good idea of how much space it's going to take. But other things like subsystems can be one of the things that are often very over or very under, depending on how things are going. Classes can often be very over or very under. But creatures, we have a pretty good idea for the amount of space they're going to take up ahead of time. And it's often rather small adjustments. And sometimes you don't even have to adjust the text at all, but we can adjust other things like minor tweaks to the art, or minor tweaks to how we space things. Lots of little tiny adjustments can be made to that can make a big impact that is not necessarily makes it fit and format nicely, and it makes the pages all look very pretty and nice and beautiful.
All right, so to wrap things up, let's say you've got some GMs that are on the fence. They've got Monster Core 1, they've got NPC Core, and they're asking
Yes.
themselves, is Monster Core 2 for me, for my gaming group? What can you tell them to get excited that, yes, they need to get themselves Monster Core 2?
You absolutely need to get Monster Core 2. It has so many cool monsters in it. Like 300 monsters seems like a lot, right? But imagine 300 more. You have so many options, so many things to choose from. You can, and just for the dragons alone, it is so cool. Oh my gosh! Like the we have a phase dragon that's like teleporting all over the place and teleporting the players. The rune dragon setting up traps on the battlefield everywhere. It's a great time. It's super cool, and you should definitely get it. Yeah, get the book. It's great.
All right, and this has been a great time. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and what went into Monster Core 2. I've had this book for about a month now, and I'm very excited about it, and I think that a lot of people, once they get their hands on it, will be excited as well.
That's awesome.
That concludes our interview about Monster Core 2, but we're not done with you yet, Joshua. We are going to move on to the fireside to have a little chat about your path to Pathfinder. Joshua, you fascinate me because you are a Pathfinder designer, which is, a highly sought after role, and yet you have so few credits on the Pathfinder wiki, and I'm wondering if it's they don't know about you, or did you just manage to like fast track into this position?
Yeah, it was a kind of a crazy story. I got very lucky, and it's one of those combinations of I did a lot of stuff and then I also got very lucky at the same time. As most things tend to be. No single person who gets a design position at Paizo does it the same way. Everyone has their own track to get there. And mine started from the homebrew sector, which is why I don't have many credits. A lot of what I've done to get any amount of renown in the community has been through community work and through homebrew that I made publicly available. For about 2 years, I did a free homebrew that I posted to the community every single day. And every day for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, you can still go back and find some of my work. I was publishing under Improfit at the time. And then after that happened, I started, getting some third-party work, and I even did my own Kickstarter, which just finished fulfillment just about a month ago.
Cool. Congratulations. That's cool that you're on the design side and the logistics side.
Yes. Yeah. And then, a position opened up, and I went through the interviews. I did very well in the design tests. I had a lot of experience, which is not a lot of credits, and I got the job without having any official Paizo credits beforehand.
Oh, so you had no credits beforehand. I noticed
Nope.
it wasn't a lot, but I figured at
Yeah.
least one of them came
Nope.
up. Wow, that's fascinating. What was the reaction internally at Paizo to this new guy coming out of nowhere with all of this instinct for the system, but no technically first party credits?
Yeah, it was I mean, I can't speak for what other people thought, of course, but when I was hired, I was also the youngest one on the team too, at the same time with like no formal Paizo experience. But I think they saw a lot of potential in me, and it's been working out really well. I've had a great time working there, and everyone says that I'm doing a good job. So no, it's been a blast. I have a great time. I've made lots of friends with all the other designers there, and it's a wonderful team.
All right, let's take it a step back, though. Let's take it all
Mhm.
the steps back, actually,
All
to
the
the
steps back.
day
Okay.
that you first became a gamer. So, what got you into the hobby?
I did not touch TTRPGs at all until college, actually. Um, I've been playing video games since I was a kid, playing like Pokemon on the old Game Boy. But like TTRPGs is not something I explored. It's actually when I was in college, people were talking about like making like a world and like designing a game, and I thought they're talking about video games at the time. It's like, oh, that sounds interesting.
I
I
have all
want to
these
get in on that.
programmer friends.
Yeah, yeah. And then they were talking about a game where they just like make it up in their head, and I was like, that's weird. I was like, but I'll join in. And yeah, it's I played a game. It wasn't D&D, and I cannot find the system to this day, but it was a different system, a much smaller game. And it was a lot of fun. I played like an edgy elf archer or something, like everyone
Nice.
does on their first game.
I
uh
kind of want to try and like figure out what that game was, but
yeah,
outside
yeah,
of
me
like
too.
Pathfinder, I don't know all the games that are out there. So I would ask
Yeah.
you questions. Someone in the chat or someone in the comments would be like, "It's clearly this game, you two noobs."
Literally this one game. Yeah, it was like a three-class game where you could play like a caster, a fighter, or like a dexterity kind of character. And I played the dexterity kind of character and made them an archer.
Very cool.
Um, yeah, it was a good time. And then I got really into D&D during the pandemic, and then eventually Pathfinder too. I actually moderated for a large the rules team for a large D&D server for quite a long time. Um, and then I like got kind of I kind of like grew out of 5e in a sense. I did everything you kind of could in that game, and I wanted something new, and I fell into Pathfinder, and I was like, this is such a great system. And I found Archives and Ethos, and I was like, oh my gosh, this company is actually awesome after they're releasing all this stuff for free. So I that kind of inspired me to make a bunch of free content, because at the time Pathfinder was very Pathfinder Second Edition was very new, and there wasn't a lot of homebrew out there at the time. And opposed to like the 5e community I was coming out of, where there's homebrew all over the place. You could find anything you wanted to by looking at it. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna learn this system by homebrewing for it, posting it online, and then getting feedback. And I made a lot of mistakes early on, but I learned a lot. And yeah, if you ever want to get into designing, just start designing, and you're gonna mess up, and it's gonna be okay.
Well, start designing, and you did the crucial, braver second part of putting it out there and
Yes.
welcoming feedback.
Yeah. I'm very good with feedback. My degree for college is in theater, so at the end of every uh rehearsal, you get like everyone sit down, time to give 30 minutes of feedback to everybody. Yeah, I actually really like feedback a lot. And it is something that I personally can have learned to uh moderate the feedback I'm getting, especially from the internet. Because there's lots of feedback on the internet. Some of it's really good. Some of it is heartfelt. But if they're giving you feedback, it's because they care about it, and that's what matters. Like they're not, even if it's like not a very nice review. They took the time to read it, and they had an opinion about it, and it made them feel something.
I love that attitude. Now, you're
Yeah.
sure you're a theater major and not like a diplomacy major?
Yes, I'm sure.
What was some of your earliest design, and what was some of the feedback that really stood out about it?
So one of the first things I always design whenever I'm learning the homebrew system is I like to make Elsa. Just
Oh,
because I think it's a fun thing to make. So I think at the time it was like an an ancestry called like Frozen Heart. And looking
Cool.
back on it, it should have definitely not been an ancestry. It should have been an archetype.
But your
um,
flavor's on point. I like Frozen Heart as a name.
yeah, yeah, it was really cool because you could you could lean into the like either like keeping your emotions down, or you could lean into like the expressing the emotions, kind of like I think it's a lot of fun can be had with the flavor of the character of that show, because I don't know, I like Disney shows, and I think that I like ice, and ice is often one of the things that's kind of not as prominent in a lot of games. There wasn't really an ice themed massive character option at the
Yeah,
time. I
it's
mean,
like
yeah.
there's the elements, and then ice is element adjacent to water.
Ice, electricity, and acid often get like thrown to the side in a
So, what were some of the things people were saying about the Frozen Heart?
um didn't get a lot of feedback on it because it's my first thing, and people didn't recognize me at the time. But I started getting traction when I did my weapon series. That was I did a specific magic weapon for every weapon in the game that did not have a specific magic weapon,
Wow.
which which, as those of you who play know, that there are lots of weapons in Pathfinder, and comparatively a rather small number of specific magic weapons for those weapon types. So I'm talking like we have like there's lots of magical long swords, but there aren't a lot of magical temple swords or spiked whips or chain whips or all the other different kinds of weapons in the game. So I think there was like 300 of those that I did, which got me into the daily rhythm of making something every day. There was a lot of weapons. It might not have been 300. It might have been 100 and something. It's been such a long time since I've done that, but
I mean, even
it
if it was
felt like a
a
lot.
hundred
Yeah,
doing one a day, that's incredible.
yeah, yeah. Then after that, I was like, I want to keep making stuff, so I just started doing other things, and it was a good time. I learned a lot. I started going through every like class at a time kind of thing, learning about each of the classes while making like feats for them or like subclass adjacent things for them. Yeah, it was a great way to learn the game while also, like kind of getting when you start designing for a game, even for homebrew, if you're there are basically two approaches you can make for it, where you can design something very specific and particular for your own game, but that's not what I was doing. I was making more general content. And when you were doing it like that and you're posting online, it really gets you into the mindset of the designers, because you're trying to imitate the style of the original designers of the game, which was what I was attempting to do, which really helped me eventually I get to the position I'm in, because I spent 2 years of my life trying to mimic the design philosophy that's already written into the game. Um, and learning and kind of getting into the minds of the original designers, which was
So I'd say there's one
yeah.
of two ways that people approach their first homebrew. One is like you're doing, mimicking
Mhm.
what the published material is like, and then there's the
Yeah.
people who try to fix how the published material is presented. And again, I think you went the right direction, because then when you
Yeah.
were actually brought on board, you had an example of being able to
Yeah.
write in the tone of the books.
Yeah, and there is like nothing wrong with changing some of the design decisions for your own personal game. Like that is completely fine. Not the approach that I was going for this. But I fully encourage any kind of homebrew you want to do for your own games. It is 100% fine. If you want to make guns do D12 damage and no reload, go for it. It's your game.
All right, you talked about you have some third-party publishing credits. What was that experience like?
Third party is interesting. Every time you do something with a third party, it's a whole nother game. You kind of have to like it's kind of like it's like freelancing in any kind of community, where like you have to kind of get to understand the what the person who's hiring you kind of wants, and figure out the formatting, the system, like how they want it done, and it's you building relationships every single time you do it. And some people are super hands off. Other people will give you tons of feedback on everything you turn in and have you do it a second time. It's you just kind of learn how things work with each one, and you got to go with the flow a little bit. But yeah, it was a good time. Didn't do a ton of it. There wasn't a ton of third party Pathfinder stuff to do, but I definitely jumped into a couple of cool projects. I also did a bit of 5e 2e conversions both ways, because I was very experienced with both systems.
Like in an official capacity, that was people were hiring you
Yep.
on. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Can't recall the names of the projects I did because it's 4 years ago at this point, 3 or 4 years.
Surely you
But yeah,
remember the big one.
I my Sinclair's. Oh wait,
Okay.
which big one?
I don't know.
Uh
Surely one of them stood out to you as this is what I like
yeah.
my big contribution to the third party space.
Uh Sinclair's was big at the time when it was being released, and I did a bit of writing for that, but I kind of did a lot of the early writing. And then I kind of jumped into writing my own book at that time and getting that all sorted out. The biggest thing that I've worked on would definitely have been my own Kickstarter. Doing your own Kickstarter is a ton of work. And I did it also without a team. It was just me, and it was a trial, and not one I intend to ever repeat again.
How'd you handle the art or just the visual of the Kickstarter and product that you turned over?
Yeah. I found an artist that I liked working with who was didn't do any AI work. I definitely confirmed that ahead of time, and they were offering good prices for their work. And I ordered batches of art from them, and it turned out great. Yeah, it was a wonderful relationship. They are I can actually tell you their name.
Please.
Yeah. It was Ink and Tea. Ink the Tea is the name of the illustration company the studio that I worked with. And they were excellent. They always turned delivered often ahead of schedule, which was
Nice.
wonderful. Um, yeah, and I normally did it in like batches of like 10 to 20 pieces at a time, depending on the sizes of the pieces. And yeah, it was really nice being able to get all my art from a single studio because it made all the art in the book look really like uniform. And
Consistent.
that's
Yep.
yeah, really consistent. And it was wonderful. Like they implemented feedback I gave really well when things needed like adjustments, and it was a great time. Highly recommend them.
What was your goal for the Kickstarter? Were you trying to just make a lot of money? Were you trying to get something out
No,
there?
I did. I
Experience?
didn't. I didn't really make any money off the
Okay.
Kickstarter. It was, but it was a good experience. It was good. It's good credit. A good experience. It shows. It's something that I also really wanted to do. To just have a book published. I thought that'd be really cool to do. And it was great because seeing the community that I've built up with the over the years. Because like I only did this book because people kept asking me when I was posting the free homebrew online if I was ever going to publish it into a book. And the book is like an accumulation of my first year of posting the homebrew. And Kickstarter went through a lot of trials because during the time, right after I think about right after the Kickstarter finished is when the remaster happened.
Yeesh.
So we did a big Kickstarter vote and we voted to remaster the material. So I went back through all the stuff that's already been written and I remastered all of it for the final book. And now, which is great that I did because everyone's using remaster now. And releasing a book with old Oracle classes would be a little bit hard to implement in your games. But yeah, it was wonderful to see the community like asking you to write a book. Like that's it. It felt
It's
like
a
something
huge
that
compliment.
was next step. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You mentioned getting into Pathfinder over the pandemic. Have you made the switch to physical space gaming, or do you primarily play online?
I still primarily play online. Physical, I do a lot of physical space gaming, but that is mostly reserved for board games for me. I'm a big board game player. And I do still do lots of TTRPGs online, but a lot of my friends that play TTRPGs are elsewhere in the world. So the being able to play them online is really a great that is awesome thing that we can do because otherwise we wouldn't be able to play at all. And it's a great way to just stay in touch with friends who are far away. Um, and I still play with some of my oldest friends. It's a great time.
All right. So you said you're the youngest member on the team. You got into
Yeah.
TTRPGs a little bit later. You mostly have online experience. So what perspective does that give you that a lot of the other Paizo staff might not have?
Um, well, A lot of different media that we can draw from and that we get inspiration from is a bit different. And I'm not the youngest anymore. Like there are younger members on both the Starfinder and Pathfinder team than me now. But at the time, I was definitely the youngest. I think I have a different perspective from where I grew into the space from. Um, like I don't have it's good to have people on the team who have a lot of like first edition to draw from, and other people on the team who don't have a lot of like first edition Pathfinder to draw from, because but I'm not like I don't feel the need to keep things the way that they used to be. I don't have any of the habits or expectations that old games might bring with them. So I think I offer a different perspective in that case.
I imagine the
And
flip side
yeah,
is true. Like, what are the older
yeah,
gamers might be like,
I
well, this
learned
goes
so
without
much from all of
saying. And
them.
you're like,
Yeah,
no, it needs to be said. I have no idea what you're talking about.
yeah. It's I think it's really good to have a diversity of different voices and opinions, and I think I add to that, and a lot of other teams add to that, and I learned a lot from them, and hopefully they might learn something from me.
You've shared a lot of opinions about monsters, but now let's just wrap up Monster Month with what's the one thing that people should think about when they are approaching a Pathfinder monster?
Designing or fighting.
Let's say as a GM.
As a GM, if you're approaching a monster, um, yeah. So whenever I'm approaching a monster as GM, I want to know how it fits into the world. And something that we take a lot of care into is making the monsters in the book fit into a lot of different kinds of scenarios, so that you can make a monster fit in the scenario that works best for you. And I like to think a lot about the ecology of where the monster belongs in the world and why they are where they're at. Why is there why is the dragon in this particular cave and not in a castle abandoned? What else is living in a cave with a dragon, and how is it surviving there? Has it formatted some kind of alliance with the dragon? Is it so beneath the care of the dragon it's not worth going? Or maybe it just doesn't taste good and the dragon just leaves them alone. There's lots of things to think about with that. I like to approach creature selection from a top-down approach, where think of like what's at the top of the food chain in any given area, and then I work my way down from there, and to kind of see how an area coexists with the other creatures there. Um, that's how I approach monsters from a GM perspective.
All right, I think it's a good time to wrap things up. Where can people find you online? Assume you want to be found.
I have a Blue Sky account that I check about once every 2 weeks. Um, what is my handle? It is in profit.
Can you
Dot Blue
spell that?
Sky.
Because
Yeah,
phonetically, there's a few ways that could go.
absolutely. It is IMPROPHET. And that is the dot Blue Sky, BSKY Blue Sky stuff at the end of it. But yep, IMPROPHET. I am profit.
What's the story behind that name?
So when I was a wee lad, my stepbrother played a lot of World of Warcraft, and he had lots of different characters and lots of different accounts, but he always began his character names with the same two letters, as so that whenever he swapped servers, people would recognize him.
Hmm.
And when he's like, "Hey, do you want to play too?" And he told me this, and he recommended that I do the same thing. So I just said I do the I am at the top of it, and I started playing a cleric as the first one. So I did Prophet as the name, and then I never played any more World of Warcraft. But I had a name for an internet thing, and I just kept using it on all my other things. So M Prophet just kind of stuck.
There is a cartoon where it's like I am Weasel, and that is all I'm remembering from it. And it's IR, is it IR Baboon? I am Weasel. Anyway, you have triggered a memory, and I wasn't sure if it was a reference to that. But it
Unfortunately, it
apparently
is
is not.
not.
It's a coincidence.
Nope, it's just I put M at the front of things.
But this was great to get to know you, Joshua. So thank you again. And of course, people want to find Monster Core 2, they can find it at paizo.com and their friendly local gaming stores. Thank you for joining me for another installment of No Direction. If you liked what you saw, like the video. If you really liked what you saw, subscribe. And if you really, really liked what you saw, you can go to patreon.com/no direction and support us, financially. Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello, and if you want to find the path, you need no direction.